You could watch movies and there's this one glorious moment of things. And when it comes to homeschooling and motherhood, it's a lot of moments. It's a lot of moments devoted to just doing the thing.
Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course, because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening.
Did you get a chance to enter to win a Homeschool Mom book? And not even just any Homeschool Mom book, but one that you get to choose. On Monday's episode, I told you all about a survey so that I can get some feedback and some information from you to hear about what you enjoy in the podcast. What do you want to hear more of? And I just want to be able to serve you best. And in order to do that, because right now, this podcast, you're listening and I am speaking, and the survey is a way for you to be able to speak back to me. You are able to access that survey. The link will be in the show notes, but you can also go to spelled bit.ly/L/L survey. Again, the link is in the show notes, and that'll only take you a couple of minutes. Now, when you fill out that survey before February 9th of 2025, you'll be entered into the random drawing, and I'm going to grab 3 of your surveys, and I'm going to send you an email and let you know that you can go ahead and pick out a book from one of the guests that I have had here on the podcast, and I will just send that straight to your mailbox. You'll get it in just a couple of days. How cool and how fun would that be? So if you take a look at some of the previous guests that I have, you'll be like, oh, wow. So you can start thinking right now, which book would I choose? Which one would you pick out to read? So here's some of the guests that you can choose books from. Leah Bowden, Dorinda Wilson, Connor Boyack, Abby Halberstadt, September McCarthy, Leslie Martino, Ginny Urich, Jamie Erickson, and there's probably more, but I will send you that list if your name is drawn. But either way, I would love to be able to hear from you so that I can serve and answer your questions and meet the needs that you have for here in the homeschool. Again, go over to that survey before the 9th to be able to be entered for that drawing. And I thank you so much for that feedback. Now, today's episode, it might strike a nerve for you. You might have read the title and instantly it just kind of got like a shot down your spine and you're like, ooh, that did not feel good. Or maybe like I think that was a little bit of a gut punch. Or maybe you might look at this and say, I don't find myself in that situation, but I have a friend who's in that situation. Or I don't have a friend right now, but I might find myself or I might find a friend down the road in that situation. So give this episode a listen because I think it's going to arm you with some really good information to be able to get yourself out of this difficult place or be able to help a friend get out of a difficult place. Before we go any further, let's talk about the phrase of a child being behind, because I will hear that often from probably every single homeschool mom I've ever spoken to at some point has uttered the words, I think my child is behind, or I don't want them to be behind, or they will be behind if I homeschool them. You've mentioned that at some point. And I have actively said that there is no being behind. There is no behind, and I do have an entire episode about that. I'll link it in the show notes. However, there is a line that you can cross that possibly, I wouldn't maybe say behind, but your student, your child is really lacking and is not equipped to be able to take things to the next level. And therefore, that foundation that they need to have in order to go further in life, to be able to get a career or to go to college, go to further education, because maybe a career that they want requires them to go to college. There is that line that you can cross where you've neglected homeschool and you've neglected studies, you've neglected study habits, you've neglected giving a love of learning or teaching a child how to learn. They could be, I'm not even going to put an age on it because kids can be on their own curve, their own path. There are kids that don't read until they're in maybe double digits of ages, but you've been putting in effort and they've been putting in some effort and it just suddenly clicks. But you can get to the point where you have maybe neglected all reading, have never read to a child. Child's never, I mean, this is a little extreme, has never seen a book, has never experienced any type of reading, has had no desire, or math. And you find yourself, it's not from a place of them having any struggles or any type of lacking in their ability to grasp concepts. It's just coming from a place of you ignoring your homeschool responsibilities and being apathetic and saying, oh, they'll catch on to it at some point. And some kids are going to need a little bit more of a push. So you're listening to this episode because you yourself or someone you know, or possibly in the future, you might need this information of, my child is really struggling because I've neglected my role, my duties as a homeschool mom. I see homeschooling as my job. We wouldn't not go to a job. If and when you have had a job outside of the home, and if you consistently didn't show up to that job, what would happen? You'd find yourself fired from that job. You wouldn't have that job anymore. And then you would go look for another job, and maybe they would ask for a referral and check with your other job and find out that you don't show up, and you might not get hired for that next job. I looked at homeschooling as my job, and motherhood too, but not in a way that just made it like there's a blanket like prescription of, if I do A, B, C, D all the way up to Z, my kids will turn out perfectly and everything will be wonderful. They will know everything that they need when it comes to homeschooling in life, and their faith will be solid. And I know everybody wants it. They want to know, well, if this happens, what do I do with this? What do I do with that? What do I do with this? And wanting to know, like, we want a step-by-step. And there's so much great information. I've shared information. There are options of things and there are things to try, but there is no guaranteed result. There is no guarantee of how things are going to turn out. And now I'm going down a rabbit trail here. Let's get back to, if you had a job and you didn't show up, you would get fired from that job. And so I looked at motherhood and homeschooling as my job. It is a priority. So maybe that's a better way of thinking of it. If you're like, well, I don't want to think of it as a job, because that just sounds so mundane and boring and not as exciting, then just think of like, this is my priority right now. And I mean, being a mother, for me, that's always going to be a priority. It's just going to look different in different seasons. But if you don't show up to the homeschooling, then you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not doing what you're saying that you're going to be doing. And for me, I live in a homeschool state. I live in a state that has very strict homeschool regulations. And I think, well, I know that it is a way to hopefully avoid parents not doing the stuff, like to keep them from neglecting, but you can just lie on it. But legally, if I go and lie and say I did things and I didn't do it, I could be into a heap of legal trouble. But there are states that are very open and you can be taking advantage of that. And so our goal needs to be that we are setting our children up for some really good success, no matter what that's going to look like and what your family is focused on. So I've got a step-by-step here. If you find yourself in this situation, it is 8 steps, 7, and then like a bonus little 8 if you need to take things a little bit further. The first is to acknowledge your part in the situation that you're in. In the scenario, acknowledge where you have fallen short. And first, that comes from a place of acknowledging to yourself and saying, wow, I've gotten myself into a situation. And so we have to just verbalize that. You can verbalize it out loud all by yourself and say, I have not been doing what I needed to do. And so at first, acknowledge your part in it. The victim status, because this could be coming about from circumstances that are beyond your control, but staying in a victim state doesn't change the course. So yes, you still could be a victim of different circumstances that has led to neglecting the education of your children to one degree, whether it's a severe degree or just slightly, and you're feeling like you've been negligent. So yes, there are things that could make it that you didn't have control over it. But right now at this point, hopefully you have control over some of those things and you can make some changes. And if you remain in the victim status, you're not going to be able to change the course. And the point of this is to change the course, right? Because you want to keep homeschooling. And so let's redirect. Number 2 is to admit to your spouse or to maybe others, to a friend. Maybe your husband, he might know already, and you need to now maybe go talk to a friend about it. Whether this friend homeschools or not, it is a friend that you can admit what's going on. Not just for accountability, but also just for support. Maybe your husband knows, but you might say, hey, look, I need to make some changes. I'd really like you to be able to support me, and let him know what his role, what part he can take in that, whether that is just praying for you or that is actually asking you every single day how you are doing. And when you ask him to ask you every single day how you are doing, do not get upset and mad at him when he asks you, because you asked him to ask you, right? And so don't take it as an offense against yourself. This is something that you have set up for some type of support. So after you have acknowledged your part and admitted to yourself, admit to your spouse and or to a friend or a couple of others, whoever you want to pull in for some support. Step number 3 is to have a heart-to-heart with your child. Now, this child could be 7 years old. This child could be 17 years old. And so that conversation is going to look different, obviously, with the different ages that they are. Either way, the outcome is that you two become a team. You want them to say, look, Mom, yeah, she's kind of messed up, but she's asking me to take a part in this. And when kids have an active part in their education, they're going to embrace it a bit more and hopefully get a little bit more excited. Now, if you have been very much a free-for-all and neglecting a lot of things, you're going to hit some resistance, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So hold on to that one. But have a heart-to-heart with your child. When we as an adult speak to our child again, whether they're 7 or they're 10 or they're 15 or they're 18, and we admit to them where we have fallen short and our part in it, it's very humbling, right? It's not very fun, but it actually helps them to see you as a person, and it helps you to connect. And if you come at it from, especially if you have a tween or a teen, and you say, look, let's form a partnership here. Let's form a team, and let's be talking about this. It's not just me as the mom saying, you have to do this math lesson, you have to do this language arts lesson, you have to do this, you have to do that. Let's work together on this, especially as they are older, and if they have not done any type of schooling or anything that you don't see that there is anything that's going to help them, they're going to be pretty resistant. And so if you look at it as you guys are a team in deciding the curriculum and deciding what you're going to do and what things look like, that's going to go a long ways. Step number 4 is to expect some pushback. It's going to get harder before it gets easier. Anything gets harder before it gets easier. If you wanted to run a marathon, it's going to be hard, right? Until your body, your muscles, and your cardio, everything is more in tune and is used to doing it. It's very hard. You might have a hard time at first running. Let's go to like a 5K. Let's just start with a 5K instead of running a marathon, right? You want to run a 5K and you say, in 6 months, I want to run a 5K. And you go and you run a quarter mile and you are huffing and puffing. You're going to say, wow, this is really hard. But I can almost guarantee in 6 months when you are ready to run that 5K, a quarter mile is going to feel like a breeze. It might still not be the easiest thing, but comparatively, it's going to feel so much easier. So expect some pushback. Things are going to get hard. You're going to have to remind your child that you guys are a team and you're working together. And this is not in a way that you are manipulating them. It is a way that you really are going to be a team. And when we homeschool, we get to be a team. When kids are in school, there is no team necessarily between teacher and student. Sometimes teachers are like that, and that's fantastic. But overall, they might have 20, 30 kids in a classroom, and they can't have a one-on-one team with every single child. It might be a teacher that takes a special interest in a certain student and really sees a gift in them. So say it's an art teacher, and they do become a team, but it's more of a rare thing. But when you homeschool, you get to become that team. And so you have to constantly be reminding them and reminding yourself that we are a team, and it will get harder. If you expect it to get harder before easier, then that's actually a good thing. So when maybe it isn't as hard as you think it's going to be, then you're like, oh, okay, this isn't as hard. Well, I expected it to be hard, and I expect to get pushback. Step number 5 is to figure out a plan moving forward. You might have to do some of this on your own. You might have to do some of it with your child. You really do have to know your child and figure out how are we going to move forward? What decisions are you going to make as a blanket overall decision? And what decisions are they going to have input in? And what decisions are they going to make on their own? So when you're making decisions on how to move forward, you need to figure out a routine. You don't have to have a schedule for the day. That might work. It might work for some kids. You might have to come up with more of a schedule, but overall just a routine. Like, what are you going to do each day? What kind of curriculums and resources are you going to use? I suggest that if you are starting to implement things, let's go back to the 3 R's, but I would actually even bring that down to just 2. So arithmetic/math, what we call it now, mathematics, and some type of reading. Just focus on those, and you can always build out. You might say, well, I haven't done any history, I haven't done any science, I haven't done any geography, we haven't done any foreign language, I haven't done any literature, I haven't done all these things. Math and reading, okay? And figure out the curriculum and the resources that are going to meet your needs right now where your child is. And so figuring out then also a routine, but also deciding, do I need to pull in some other resources here? Do we need to join a co-op for accountability or for other teachers to teach some subjects? Do you need to hire a tutor or maybe do some type of exchange or bartering or something, or find somebody to tutor, some way to be able to fill in some of those gaps? So figure out a plan moving forward. Step number 6 is to remember that consistency is key. Your motivation is going to go up and it's going to go down. It's going to keep going down at times. Consistency is key. You might decide in the beginning, we're just going to do some of this stuff 2-3 days a week. Be consistent on those 2-3 days a week. So say you start out with 2, then you add 3, then you can add 4, and then you can add 5. And you don't even ever have to get to 5. You can set up your own kind of schedule and how that looks. But just knowing that consistency is key. You just have to do it. You just have to get up off your bum and you got to do it. And the more that you do it, the more it will become a habit. We don't come up with a habit and then it's instantly ingrained in our mind. No, you can come up with a habit and then you have to take steps in order to create that habit and then to make that habit a part of your life. So think about even working out, exercising. As of recording this right now, I had to take off yesterday from exercising and my day was just completely different. And today was harder to get back into it. And here I am kind of at the end of the day. I'm like, you know what? I will do something tonight because it's so easy to fall out of a habit just even one day. One book that I do recommend, my 11th grader and I have read this and my older son had read it too. And it's called Atomic Habits. I don't remember James McCleary, I think. I would highly recommend that for you if you are struggling with creating habits. Now, does not come from a biblical worldview, so understand that there's going to be some things. Now, he and I read this together as part of our homeschool. I actually read it out loud to him, and so I enjoy reading out loud, and not to toot my own horn, but I can do it fairly well, and I can read ahead very well. And so I was able to kind of drop out some of the examples and things because it's written for a secular adult. But still, a lot of great information in that if you are having a hard time creating habits. And don't feel like you have to read that book all at once. You can read it a chapter and then just implement one thing at a time. But I do recommend that book if you're struggling with the habits. But number 6 is that consistency is the key. You just have to do it. Number 7 builds off of that. And we're going to use the title of this podcast, and I'm going to say it's Little by Little. I named this Little by Little Homeschool because you have to homeschool little by little. It's not going to all happen in 1 year. And even if you take a child out of school and you only get to homeschool them for 1 year, maybe it's their 12th grade year, you just take that year little by little. Every year, just little by little. 1 foot in front of the other. Sometimes you might take a bit of a leap. It might be a big gate. My 17-year-old and I, when we go for a walk, he kind of laughs because for every 1 step he takes, I have to take 2 steps. So sometimes you might be taking a 6 foot, 3 inch young man's step, and sometimes you might be taking a 5 foot, 5 inch, 49-year-old woman's step, and that's okay. Or something in between, or something smaller, or even bigger. But just 1 foot in front of the other. That's where things happen. There isn't always this moment. We just think of, you could watch movies and there's this one glorious moment of things. And when it comes to homeschooling and motherhood, it's a lot of moments. It's a lot of moments devoted to just doing the thing. And I say, put your head down and do the thing. The 8th thing I do want to mention here is that if this is you, if you are finding yourself in this situation, I really want you to take these steps that I have mentioned today. They really will get you out of the situation that you are in. But if you're finding that you need more accountability and you want to create a plan, I have a mentorship that is available to you. I'll put the link for you in the show notes, but you can also go to littlebylittlehomeschool.com/mentorship. Now, you might say, I don't struggle with this, but I have some other concerns. The mentorship is for whatever. You get to choose the topic that we're going to talk about. But if this topic specifically that we are talking about today is an area that you need more help in, that you need to come up with a plan, you're like, okay, this all sounds great theoretically, but I need some more meat on those bones. That's what we will do in the mentorship, and I would love to be able to walk and guide you through that. So that link is in the show notes. But also there's another link in the show notes, and that is for the survey. This is the last call on the podcast to take part in that survey, to give me some feedback. I want to hear what you want to hear more about here on the podcast and how I can serve you better when it comes to your homeschooling. The link is going to be in the show notes, like I mentioned, for that. And in exchange for that, 3 of you are going to receive a homeschool mom book. I love homeschool books. You should see my bookshelf. And I haven't even gotten through all of those, but all of the guests that I have had here on the podcast, if they have written a book, I would love for you to choose the guest and choose the book that they have written that you would like to receive. I endorse all of their books. All of them are great authors, and all of them have great books, and I've read most of them, and I would love to be able to send that straight to you. So you have to take the survey in order to enter to do that. And you could take that survey at bit.ly/L/L survey. I look forward to hearing from you, as well as seeing you back here on the podcast after the weekend.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.